Hey everyone, welcome back to another interview here on Simple Programmer YouTube and Simple Programmer podcast now. Today I have the honor of speaking with Sir John Hargrave, who has written a book recently called Mind Hacking. Which this is a topic that I'm really interested in because, as you know, I wrote a book, Soft Skills, and I talk a little bit about some of these things, but this is one of those things I would consider to be a major soft skill. So I'm really excited to talk to John about this book. Welcome, John, and thanks for doing this interview.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
So I have to start off by asking you, how do you get a sir? How do you get to be a Sir John Hargrave? Because that's pretty cool. I need to get a Sir in front of my name. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's not difficult, John. So I wrote the Queen of England a few years ago, and I said to her, Your Majesty, I would like to be knighted. Because, I just thought Sir John sounded so much classier.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So she wrote me back and she said, Well, you have to do something honorable. And I said, Well, that's a lot of work. So I found out you can go down to your local courthouse, and for a small fee, you can pay to have your name legally changed. So I went down, paid the name change fee, went before a judge, and now here I am, Sir John Hargrave. So it's kind of a name hack, if you
Ah,
will.
I like it. That's great. Yeah, there we go. You can do it you can do it the easy way.
That's what hacking is all about. You can do it the
Exactly.
hard way, or you can do it the easy way.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. That's pretty cool. It's funny. It's so many people are afraid to do a name change. I always talk to. I always think it's funny when someone has just an unfortunate name. That's just
Yeah,
because I talk a lot about marketing yourself and branding yourself, and I'm like, if I had a name that was like, if my name was John Smith,
yeah.
you can't market yourself as John Smith. Like, just
No,
too. I would just
no, you might as well be called vanilla ice cream.
exactly.
Yeah.
I would just change
Now,
my
but
name. Do it.
the flip side of that, John, is when you have a really embarrassing name. Like I know this woman, and her last name is Pooey,
Yeah.
Pooey, and she got the name through marriage. So her former name was something like Robinson, and that she took her husband's name of Pooey. And I thought, how much love does she have for this guy to change her name?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
That is true. Yeah, it makes you wonder just why doesn't the whole family just change their name? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, your heritage and ancestry needs to take a back seat to just a better name.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let me give you a chance to formally introduce yourself. Tell everyone a little bit about kind of who you are, what your background is, and then we'll get a little bit into your book. And
Yeah, so I'm Sir John Hargrave. As we've established, I'm the CEO of internet marketing company Media Shower, and I am a geek. I am a fellow programmer and geek at heart. I started out my career as a developer, and this book, Mind Hacking, came out of the realization I had that our minds are very much like computers.
right.
And like computers, we can learn to debug them, to identify the problem thinking that we have going on in our heads, and then to reprogram it with amazing new positive thoughts that take our lives in an exciting new direction. So your brain can be reprogrammed. That's the message of mind hacking, and the message I'm really excited to share with your audience.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I totally agree with that. Before we get into the mind hacking though, I do have to mention because this is you're kind of a rare breed. You're in good company, by the way. The combination of being a programmer and an internet marketer. A lot of constantly fight the battle of a lot of programmers don't like internet marketing, but I love it. That's what I'm all about. But so that's a real
That's
interesting background.
Yeah, that is a good insight that those two don't often mix. And what is it about the marketing piece that you like, John?
I think there's so much opportunity, and also just you know, I love writing good copy. I love the ability to be able to spread a message and to be able to reach so many people and to understand how the process works, how people think. There's a lot of psychology behind it, and I don't know, something feels good about figuring it out and getting a product. The hardest thing about getting a product out there is doing the marketing, is selling that product. Something feels good about connecting someone with something that they need, and being able to be the value, in that system. So
Yeah, yeah, I think we've all been exposed to bad marketers, and probably that's where most programmers kind of, wariness comes from. But you're right that when you approach marketing from a developer, from a programming standpoint, it is like an interesting problem to be solved. It's like a puzzle, or figuring out an algorithm, as you said, to get the right products in the hands of the right people who can benefit the most.
yeah. It's interesting. I mean, different people approach it differently, but I mean, my philosophy has always been like, I give away 90% of what I do for free and charge for 10%, and
Yeah.
that's how I market, is because giving value to others. I think there's a good way to market, but
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that philosophy. And actually, the mind hacking book we are making available for free online before it's available in bookstores. So we have that same philosophy, that same approach of like, let's open source this. Let's, make it as
yeah.
widely distributed as possible. And then we're trusting that, the book looks great and people are also going to come in and purchase it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good bet to make, which a lot of people don't understand. So are you traditionally publishing this book? Are you self-publishing the book? And the reason why I ask is because most publishers don't understand that.
Yeah, no, they don't. So, but we are. It's being published by Simon and Schuster's Gallery Books, and it'll be in all bookstores in January 2016, or was out in January 2016, depending on when you're listening to this. The Simon and Schuster, I got to give it to them. They've really taken a big risk. Making a book available for free online is not exactly a groundbreaking idea, but it is in the traditional publishing world. And if you
Yeah,
look at it from their point of view, like, who's going to buy the book if you can get it for free? But just as open source software can flourish and thrive, even though it's available for free, there's still a business model there. You can, Google can give away all their products and services and still build an amazing company through charging for other things. And you yourself, John, just said, you give away almost everything for free, but then you're still able to make a great living through that and travel Europe and do all the exciting things you're doing. So that's the bet here.
exactly. Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, and let's be realistic, right? Technically, anyone can really get a book for free, right? I mean, if you're tech savvy, you can find books on the internet, but people still pay for them if they're like the barrier to entry. People buy stuff because they feel that they're getting value, and most people are honest and want to give value to the creator of a thing. So
that's right. Yeah, they want to pay it back if they've gotten something useful out of that, and that's my belief here, is that people read it, they'll say, this is a really great book. They'll go buy a copy for their friends or their family or what have you. So I think it was Cory Doctorow, great science fiction writer, who said, it's more important to me that there's more people in under the tent than making sure that everybody paid admission to get in under the tent. And he's given away a lot of his stuff for free. He's made a lot of his stuff available through Creative Commons licenses, at the same time that he has traditionally published it and been quite successful.
We've had some pretty good. I think who comes to mind in the programming world would be Bruce Eckel, his Thinking in Java book, which he made available for free, and he did really well with it. He still does well with it. So
yeah. So I have a whole section in Mind Hacking actually about free computer books. This fellow, Alan Downey, who really kind of pioneered the whole free computer book genre. And he did it because he was teaching computer science classes, and he was so frustrated with everything out there that he just said, I'm going to take my summer break. I'm going to write a 12-chapter book in 12 weeks. And he did it. He wrote one chapter. I'm sorry, I think it was 12 chapters in 12 days. And I think he wrote it in 12 days. And then he brought it into his class, and then he was able to quickly iterate. It was very much like an agile programming kind of idea of writing a book. And he was able to watch the students and see how they tested after each week of going through these chapters that he kind of binge written. And he was able to then test and iterate and improve it each year. And he's written dozens of these free books. And now O'Reilly is working with him to create additional books. And he's been quite successful with that. So I think that model really works, but especially in the programming world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's get into a little bit on the mind hacking side. So mind hacking. So I think there was this whole debate, right, between about the plasticity of your brain, right? So I would assume that you're definitely on the side of saying that you have a lot more plasticity, or am I pronouncing that right? Am I saying the wrong thing, like in terms of mind hacking? Is that what you're talking about here, or are you talking about? I mean, obviously, probably more than that, but is that kind of the core concept?
Yeah. So you are saying it right, and it is a central concept that your brain can be reprogrammed. That's the central thesis of the book, and the book, I really wanted it to be like a user manual for the mind.
Okay.
So in other words, how do we reprogram our minds? How do we learn new stuff and overcome these negative habits of thought and debug them and reprogram them? And I really wanted something that was not theoretical, but very practical, very hands-on, very how-to, like a programming manual for your brain.
Right.
Because everything in your life starts with your mind, right? Like all of our actions originate with thoughts, and those thoughts come up spontaneously in our minds. So when we can learn to become aware of them and reprogram them, then we can reprogram essentially our entire string of actions and ultimately our lives. Okay. So there's also a lot of research into this. So it's very important with all the hacks, the techniques, and the tips in the book to make sure that each one was grounded in scientific research, that they really have been proven to be effective in helping people change their thinking, modify their behavior, develop new habits, and improve their lives.
Okay. So let's unpack a few of these then, I guess, because I think there's a couple of things that stuck out to me that what you said here. So the idea of reprogramming the brain, I think, there's I guess I would logically divide it into like the knowledge or stuff or learning stuff, like, and then the sort of self-image, like, attitude, mental thing that affects everything that you do. How do you divide, or how are those things differently pre-programmed, or what area do you focus on in the book?
Well, there's really a three-step process, or kind of thinking of it in three categories. So the first one is to become aware of your mind.
Okay.
And, if I tell you right now, John, think about your mind, you'll clearly see that there's something called you and there's something called your mind, and you are thinking about your mind. Right. So that shows you in a very simple level that you're not your mind, you're separate, and you can view it in the same way that we would view like a programming environment. Okay. But becoming aware of it on an ongoing basis, on a daily basis, on a regular basis, that is the challenge. That's surprisingly difficult, because throughout the day we're actually kind of merged with our mind, or kind of identified with it, stuck in it. We're like watching the movie. So learning to become aware is the first step. And then second is learning to debug the thoughts. So as we see those problem thoughts come up, the ones that are holding us back, to see, okay, let's find those negative thought loops, that negative code that's running our thinking, and let's identify it and become aware of what's happening. Then the third step is reprogramming it. So in other words, developing new habits of thought and making them stick. The whole last part of the book is all about hacks or techniques to help those positive habits of thought stick in our lives.
I see. Okay. So I would say then that you're very squarely focused on the the meta of the mind itself, not the how can you learn things quickly, but more of how can you control the entire process. Am I being more,
Yeah.
is that more accurate now?
Yeah, that is accurate, because the meta thinking, we also call it thinking about your thinking, or metacognition is the technical term. Thinking about our thinking is the critical skill that we have to learn first.
Right.
I think a lot of technical folks or programmers think about, well, how do I learn faster? But they're not looking at the bigger picture of, well, how do I think in the first place? And so they can only have limited impact. We talk a lot about super user mode. So getting into super user mode in your mind is like getting admin access. It's like rooting into your mind, right? So it's like, how do we break out of this normal everyday user mode, and how do we kind of like hit Control M and get into this like mastermind mode, or the super user mode, where we can then start to really work on that code that's underlying our thinking.
Okay. This is really interesting. This overlaps a few things that I'm interested in. It brings up an example. Like when you're talking through that, I was thinking about, I used to get really upset in traffic, right? I used to get just angry, and then at one point I started realizing that I was doing that, and I thought, getting angry in this situation doesn't help me at all. So I have this trigger now. It happens automatically now. I'll sit in traffic and something will happen. Someone will cut me off, or there's a light or something, and then I'll get mad for a brief instant, and then my mind sort of short circuits and says, oh, wait a minute. Getting mad at an inanimate object or a situation you can't control does you no good. And then all of a sudden it's gone. Like I've been able to, is that a mind hack? Is that the kind of thing that you're
That is perfect. You've described it so well.
All right.
I've done so many of these interviews. You just described it better than anyone has to date. So it's becoming aware of that moment where your mind's going down this one track, and then developing this sort of like, it's almost like, you take a sled down a hill, and then like you don't want to go down that sled track anymore, so you start cutting a new track. So it's like you gotta redirect, but you're becoming aware of, I'm getting angry about traffic, and then you're able to quickly just redirect it. And doing that again and again and again, you eventually wear this new groove into your mind.
Yep.
And then it just happens automatically, and suddenly your new thought is like, okay, I don't have to get upset about this. And there's even a next step you can take, John, which is to say, I'm grateful for this traffic, or this traffic is actually a good thing in some way. Like it's going to allow me to think through a problem or something. It's going to test me somehow. It's like strength training. So then turning it into a positive is like the final step in that, where now you turn your negative completely into a positive. And that's what it's all about.
Okay. This very much aligns with my philosophy in life. I'm a very big fan of the Stoics, of Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and Stoic philosophy, which talks a lot about the idea of taking these things and turning them around and figuring out and how you can turn everything into a positive, not letting fate.
I quoted Marcus Aurelius in an early draft of the book. I don't know if it made it through to the final version, but yeah, very, very similar.
Okay. And it also reminds me a little bit of, are you familiar with the book Psycho-Cybernetics?
I am familiar. I haven't read it, but yeah, I definitely know about it.
Okay. You'd probably find that interesting because he talks a little bit. There's a concept in there, which, I mean, it's pretty mainstream, but it's called theater of the mind, and it's this idea that, I mean, a lot of athletes do it now. They play in their head what they are going to do, but they see it, they rehearse it over and over, and then it's kind of like you're saying, like cuts that new groove in the new track, so that they automatically perform on that new track because they've rehearsed it so many times. But I'm really fascinated by this concept. So you've broken this down then to make this a process that someone could follow and be aware of. This, I think you said it was a 5-step process.
Yeah, well, 3 steps. So becoming aware, and then finding the negative, debugging the negative thought loops, and then reprogramming the positive. I just want to comment on that theater of the mind. There's a whole chapter on what we call simulation. And it's very much what you're discussing, which is seeing all the steps that you need to take to get to some end goal. So there's a lot of research that says just visualizing the end goal doesn't work. But the research shows if you visualize the steps, or simulate in your head the steps that will be needed to get there, then you'll have a better chance at doing it. And we quote in the book Jack Nicklaus, actually, who says, you know, before every shot in golf, I go to the movies inside my head. That's his term.
Yep.
And he sees the swing, like the ball sailing up, hitting the green, and then going into the cup. And even if we're doing programming or starting a business or developing a project at work, if we can see all the steps that we're going to have to go through, including the problems we're going to run into and how we're going to successfully overcome them. There's some interesting research we quote in the book that says you will be more likely to be prepared when those problems come up and to see it all the way through to your final goal.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think that's in golfing, the whole theory of the mind from the psycho-cybernetics became a big thing. So it probably originated from these ideas, which is, it's really interesting how like these paths converge, like these same kind of, there's like these universal principles that hold true about how to be more effective and how to gain control of yourself, getting self-discipline. And so I'm really really interested.
Yeah, my publisher said, you know, there's only one self-help book, and it's just being rewritten all the time.
Yeah.
But what I loved about this concept of mind hacking was taking those ideas that, as you said, are very ancient, going back to the Stoics, but using it in a modern context, because we all understand this idea of computer environment and programming environment, and the sense that there's this space in my screen that I can kind of manipulate. It's not physical reality, and yet it has a reality. And the same thing is true of our minds, I think, where it's not our physical reality, but it definitely is real in the sense that it controls how physical reality operates and how we interact with it. So using that metaphor of computers with the minds was the book that I've always wanted to read. So they say the book you should write is the book you've always wanted to read. And so that's the book.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what would you say? Like, I always run into people they're like, oh, I'm just a negative person, or I'm just shy, or, you know, they label themselves. And I try to say, no, you don't have to be that. You can choose to be whoever you want to be. I think a lot of people think that their mind is that they just who they are, and they can't change that. Yeah. What would you say about that?
Yeah, there's a weird kind of self-fulfilling prophecy element to this. So an example is I used to be very shy and awkward around people, and I would feel almost anxious when I'd talk with people. I would be in a conversation with you, John, and I would be thinking about, like, am I standing up straight? And is there a piece of spinach in my teeth? Right. And so forth. And then I realized, like, I got to reprogram that. And so the new thought loop was, I'm good with people. It's that simple. I'm good with people. Yeah. And repeating that to myself over and over. And then, as you just said with the traffic example, when I'm talking with somebody, when that old sort of pattern of, like, you know, feeling awkward would arise, I was now conscious of it to say, I'm good with people. And over time, guess what? I'm actually kind of good with people now. Right, exactly, yeah. So there's this self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell yourself you're a negative person, well, then by definition you are. But as we talked about with this idea of neuroplasticity, you can reprogram your mind. You can become a different type of person, and all it really requires to start is just a desire to do that, the will to do it. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I had a similar experience with being shy, and I call it kind of faking it till you make it. Like this idea, like you step into the shoes that you want to fill, and then you suddenly become that. Like your brain doesn't know that. Like you become the thing. You can't, because you can't change your beliefs, right? A lot of people are, well, I can't just believe a thing. But I've always been a big believer in positive affirmations, because over time, if you keep telling yourself the thing, you will change your belief. You just can't instantly believe a thing. It just takes time to constantly, and we always tell ourselves, I think a lot of people tell themselves a negative thing over and over and over again. That's why they're stuck in that rut, like you said. So yeah, we call them thought loops or code loops, but yeah, it's the same principle of what is it that you want? What do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And the fun of it is that you can be anybody you want to be. Like, you can make that up. And in a sense, this idea of fake it till you make it, I love that. It's like you're an actor playing a part in a way. So when you go into a meeting, if you want to be more confident, you just say, well, how would a confident person behave? And you almost pretend that you're that person until one day you wake up and you find that you really are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. At some point in my life, maybe like when I was 18 or 19, I kind of discovered that. And I literally did what you said. I totally changed who I was. And I came up with this mental image and thought, who do I want to actually be?
Yeah.
And then I just started acting as if I were that person. And then pretty soon I was that person. It was, it was something I had stumbled on, but I found so amazing to me. And I've been, as I do coaching and stuff, I try to help people to discover that same thing, because I think a lot of people limit themselves, right? They don't realize what's possible.
Yeah, we all do. We all limit ourselves in some way. But I'm curious, that's a great story. What was it? What was the catalyst for that change in you? Was it becoming an adult at that age and just thinking, who do I want to be? Or was there something that made you say, I got to decide what I want to be?
I don't know exactly what the exact thing was. I think maybe sitting in high school one day, I just I was kind of like a nerdy kid, very shy, unathletic, didn't do any sports or anything. And I thought, why? Why would some people be able to, go and do sports and not be shy and be outgoing, and why not me? And I thought I just kind of went through the process and thought there's really nothing like physically, or there's no reason why I couldn't, right? And so I just said, well, okay, I'm just going to sign up for wrestling and track and field, and I'm just going to start playing the part. And then I just did it. So I can't pinpoint it to one exact thing that made me realize that this was. I didn't even realize that was possible at the time. I just decided to do it. And it's amazingly it worked. So
yeah, you're really lucky that you had that insight. We tell a story in the book about the late Steve Jobs, and his coworkers describe him as having a reality distortion field.
Yeah.
And there's this story about these developers who went in for the original Macintosh, and he wanted it delivered in 10 weeks. And just before they went in, these two developers were talking to each other. There was a new guy, and he said, listen, this other veteran developer said he's going to want it in 10 weeks, and you're going to think it's not possible, and you're going to come out of the meeting convinced it is possible because he has a reality distortion field. And he said, no way. So he goes in and thinking there's no way this is going to be done. No way I'm going to fall prey to this. And then he comes out totally convinced that he can do it. And it was this personal belief that Jobs had that it was so strong that it actually had this kind of gravitational force, this kind of pull to affect other people as well. And I think we're all capable to some degree of creating our own reality distortion field, just like you did at the age of 18 and are continuing to do with your podcast and your books and everything else.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so much potential, I think, in so many people that they never really unlock. Even just leaving the traditional workforce, when I've been encouraging a lot of people to become entrepreneurs if they so desire. There's no reason why you have to just get up and go to work every day and do and work for someone else. Literally anyone could build a business and become independent and do their own thing. But so many people are stuck in that mindset of just thinking the way that people told them, or that's another good question maybe is so what about I'm just curious on your thoughts about being programmed by other people, right? Because I think a lot of what we come up with, about our, I've read, different things. I've said, oh, well, a lot of kids, when you say, oh, Johnny's just shy, then they develop a self-image of being shy because you've told them that they are, and that's why, or you're a klutz or whatever it is. What do you think about that concept of other people programming you?
Yeah, we're all programmed to some degree by our environment, by our parents, by our families, by our schools, by the government. And I think to some degree it's unavoidable. And part of what it means to become an adult is to take responsibility for reprogramming ourselves and to say, okay, I don't have to live with these limitations that I've had. I think that's part of the human experience. That's part of what's great about life in general. I think it's a great question because we all do have this unlimited possibility to kind of go and be and do whatever we want to be. I love your comment about entrepreneurs because, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, started this company, Media Shower, and it's been the most fantastic journey to quit my day job, to go start my own company, to build it and grow. And you do realize as an entrepreneur that there are no limits.
Exactly.
When you're working for somebody else, there's always this sense of like, this is how much I can earn. This is like how much I can grow in this career. This is like the ceiling for this position. And maybe every year, if I'm lucky, they'll raise it by like 2%.
Right.
But when you're an entrepreneur, you realize like, there's no limits to what we can do. We can like build this thing out to be $1 billion company. And I can earn as much as I want to earn. I can get as many customers as I want to. Of course, comes with all this additional work and responsibility and like having to conquer your fears and all that. But you do rapidly, I think it's like training ground, strength training for getting rid of those limitations, being an entrepreneur. I love it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's funny as I'm traveling through Europe for 3 months. We're like, oh, lucky you, and I think, well, yeah, I'm blessed. I'm happy that I'm thankful, but there's no, it could be you. Like, there's no reason. Like, I mean, we can all do this. Like, it's possible. It's not like I went and won the lottery and then, whoa, look at lucky me. It's like, this is possible for everyone. Everyone has this ability. Like, there's so much opportunity. It's not a zero-sum game.
So I'm curious. I was just reading an article in the New York Times this morning. The title is "A Fearless Culture Fuels U.S. Tech Giants." I still have it up on my screen here. A fearless culture fuels U.S. tech giants. And it was talking about the culture of Silicon Valley and of U.S. entrepreneurs and comparing them with European counterparts and saying, think of like Microsoft and Apple and Google, all enormous companies that have been started in the last, half a century in the US, and Europe has not produced anything like that, in part because of the culture. But it comes back to your question about programming, and I'm wondering how much of that cultural entrepreneurial programming you're seeing in Europe as you travel around, like what they consider possible and what's not possible.
Ah, that's interesting. I mean, I've only been here. I went to Paris, and then I'm in Berlin now for about 2 weeks. So I haven't seen that much, but I did have a meetup last night with some Berliners, and of the group, I think there were 2 freelancers of 7. So, but that's in Germany. I think in Germany it's a little bit more advanced. I did talk to a guy from Italy, and I teach developers how to market themselves, and he was like, "Oh, in Italy, no one cares. You make a blog, doesn't matter. It's not going to affect your career at all." But he's like, in Germany, it made a big difference. He moved to Germany because he was able to double his income from marketing himself, which I consider to be an entrepreneur. Like, the entrepreneurial step for an employee is to learn how to build a personal brand and market themselves, whether they become a true entrepreneur or not. So I think I think that it's still, I mean, the US has more of, it's kind of gone crazy in the US now too, right? Because we have so many kids that are like, oh, I'm just going to create a startup and get some VC funding. And that's, to me, that's not really entrepreneurship. That's like, trying to borrow someone's money to take a shortcut in life. Like, it's you're not really taking a risk. You're not really doing the thing and building a thing yourself. So I tend to be more of a bootstrap. There's a good group of bootstrappers, I think. But I found one group, MicroConf. There's a MicroConf Europe that they're doing, which another good podcast perhaps that you'd be interested in is Startups for the Rest of Us. I can make an introduction for you, but they have a MicroConf Europe, and it's all bootstrapped entrepreneurs, and so I think they've got a pretty big turnout. So I think that the tides are turning. I think in general, the U.S. is sort of leading the entrepreneurial type of shift, I am seeing more and more. I'm seeing more and more sales for my type of stuff from Europe. So I think we'll see more and more of that be embraced.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear about that. And my intent was not to say U.S. is number one, but really to ask, like, well, how do we take, if that is part of the cultural programming, is that it is dangerous to take entrepreneurial risks, how do we change that? And how do we help folks all over the world kind of get that sense of fearlessness and that sense of, I can do this?
Well, I think also, one thing that I noticed too is in the US, like if I want to just become an entrepreneur and start a company, I don't even have to file any paperwork, right? I could literally just create a website and just start collecting money. And I mean, maybe I could file an LLC, but I don't even really have to, right? It's not like, but when I was talking to someone in Berlin, they were saying, oh, well, there's a lot of paperwork you have to file if you want to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I talked to someone in Sweden and it was similar. So I do think that there's probably a little bit more of a barrier there in Europe right now. But again, I'm not a really expert on that, so I wouldn't know for sure. But yeah, I think there's probably more difficult. So
yeah, the infrastructure is really great. We're very fortunate, and I just wrote a post on our company blog at mediashower.com about we just celebrated our 20th anniversary as a company, and looking back at the early days, how difficult it was to create a website. Yeah. Like, I use the example of trying to chmod a file on the web server, like was an endeavor that took half a day. Right. And now, like, those things you don't even need to worry about because it's all, like, the tools are so good. The infrastructure is so good.
Yeah.
And so in one sense, when you don't have that infrastructure, when you don't have those tools, it's very, very frustrating. It is incredibly frustrating, but in another sense, it's a sign that you're on the right track because you really are kind of leading edge. And if you can find solutions for those problems that are frustrating you, then you are paving the way for all these others who are going to need that same solution down the road. So those points are all like signals of entrepreneurial opportunity.
Yeah. And I mean, the field has changed so much too now, right? Because like you said, like with the web, I could just, literally in a day, I could use a server on DigitalOcean to spin up a Linux server. I could drop a WordPress install on there and have a WordPress website up. And then I can integrate with Stripe and accept payments and use Gumroad or DPD or some kind of digital delivery to deliver an ebook and sell it. Like I could have an entire business created and from no website at all to I'm selling a thing online and taking money for it in a day. It's just amazing that we're at this point. So
and then you can use Amazon to just scale it infinitely, and that's what's so amazing about this point in history is it is so easy to put these pieces together and create a world-class product and platform in very little time. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So so for everyone listening, if you're wondering we're getting off topic, well, I actually think it's pretty on topic. Just this idea that so much is possible. The idea that where are you limiting yourself, right? There's so much that we can do. So I'm really excited actually to get a copy of your book. I'm glad you're really going out there and marketing it early. That's obviously the lead time on marketing something like this. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So the hardcover book comes out in January at bookstores everywhere. You can get a free pre-release copy of the book. Read the entire thing for free at mindhacky.ng.
Okay.
That's like mindhacking with a .ng, no .com. And again, we're doing that because we want to get this message spread to as many people as possible, and especially developers. So I'm really passionate about talking to the programming and developing community, because I think the next generation of tools are going to be mind-related tools, or tools that we can use to actually become more productive, become more happy, fulfilled, to keep track of our thoughts and our habits, and use that to reprogram our minds and reprogram our lives. So we have an app currently at mindhacky.ng where you can go through this 21-day program we've developed, learn mind hacking, track your progress, share your progress with others, give shout outs to other members of the community and so forth. But I would love to collaborate with other developers and programmers who are passionate about this to develop even new and better tools for managing our minds and our lives. Okay,
awesome. So yeah, so if you're listening, you're watching, definitely go to mindhack.eng, hacking with the dot in the before the ng, right?
We need to come up with some better way of, like, all these crazy new top level domains. We got to come up with a better way of being able to pronounce these.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem. I'm sure someone can figure it out though. It's it's mind hacking and then substring -2.
That's right.
Throw the dot in there. There we go.
Yeah, you could do a whole text parsing line of code. That would be really easy for people to understand.
That's true. Yeah. What's the regex to throw the dot in the?
Yeah. Somehow a grep should be involved too.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I'll definitely check out the book, and hopefully you'll get some listeners, some viewers to check it out and buy the copy and leave a review when it goes live, because that's important.
Yeah. You can also you can pre-order the book right now at Amazon.com. The hardcover version is beautiful, and it's really going to have a couple of cool new bonus features, like this 21-day program I mentioned. We have a whole workbook at the end that lets you work through that and really learn these skills and techniques of programming on your own mind. So that's available at Amazon.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks, John. Appreciate you taking the time, and it's been great to connect with someone who shares a very similar philosophy in life and is a fellow programmer, internet marketer. So,
John, good luck on your travels.
All right.
I hope they're great.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for having me. Bye.